Hi everyone and welcome. Today I'm going to show you the 5 books that I will prioritize in spring to read. But first I am going to talk about the books that I had on my winter TBR and how I fared with actually reading them in the last 3 months. Now, my winter TBR was one of the first videos that I made here on BookTube, and I didn't really anticipate the amount of read-alongs, buddy reads and things like that I wanted to participate in. So that's why I failed to read all 5 books. And on the other hand, it was also the first time that I actually made a TBR. So I definitely bit off more than I could chew in terms of choosing all new to me authors and then one series that I wanted to continue but that I wasn't really enjoying too much to begin with. So that's something that I had in the back of my mind while I was constructing my spring TBR, so that for my spring TBR I actually chose favorite authors for me or a series that I want to continue but that I am actually excited for. But before we jump into the spring TBR, here are the 5 books that I had on my winter TBR. I'm not going to go too deeply into them, but I will link all the videos that I talk about each of them in the description box down below. So if you want to hear more of my thoughts, go and check out the description box. And the first book that I actually read was The Half-Drowned King by Linnea Hartzucker. This is the first book in the Golden Wolf saga, which is a trilogy. It's historical fiction set in the Viking era, and this was definitely a disappointment for me. I am going to pick up the second and the third book. Well, I'm going to pick up the second book. We'll see for the third one, because I actually have the entire trilogy in hardback, and I have them also on audiobook. So I will try the second one, because the ending of this one left a little bit of hope for me that the series might pick up after this. But if I don't like the second one, I will DNF it, because it was a little bit of a disappointment. And then the second book that I read was The Blade Itself by Joe Abercrombie, which is the first book in the First Law trilogy by this author. And this book I'm really happy that I picked up, because I really loved it. I actually jumped into the read-along that Steve from Steve Talks About Books and Stuff was hosting together with Leslie from The Nerdy Narrative, and that really helped me as well to get to know more people of the BookTube community. So I'm so glad that I picked this one up and that I had my first online meetup with Steve and Leslie and Stacy, and just that I love the series as a whole, because I'm definitely going to pick up everything by Joe Abercrombie. I'm going to read the third book this month and again discuss this with Steve, Leslie and Stacy and maybe others as well. So for this one I'm actually really happy that this was on my winter TBR. And then for the DNF, I DNF'd The Fires of Heaven by Robert Jordan, which is the 5th book in the Wheel of Time series. And this one was already one that I was on the fence about before. I enjoyed the first 4 books, but not tremendously. I wasn't loving it. And there were a lot of things that I also didn't like in the setting and in just the general sense that you have so many characters that I think you could condense. I don't think that it should be a 14-book long series. I think that if it was shorter, it would have been more enjoyable for me. So DNFing the 5th book was something that I was anticipating that might happen. And looking on it from the positive side, this does mean that I have 10 less books on my TBR that I don't have to worry about. Because of course, as a result of DNFing The Fires of Heaven, I am DNFing the entire Wheel of Time series. And then for the books that I didn't get to. The first one is Brightness Long Ago by Guy Gavriel Kay. This is a standalone with a quite interesting setting, and this is still quite high on my priority list. I hope that I will read it somewhere this year. There are some booktubers that love this book, others that don't, and think that Guy Gavriel Kay in general isn't the author for them. So I really want to make that up for myself and see if I should dive into any of his other works as well. And then the last book that I didn't get to in winter is The Tiger and the Wolf by Adrian Tchaikovsky. This is the first book in a trilogy that talks about shapeshifting. So you have these different clans, and if you are part of the clan of the wolf, then you can shapeshift in wolves. If you are part of the clan of the tiger, you can shapeshift in tigers, etc. Now I actually did start this a little bit because I listened to it on audiobook, but I really hated the audiobook, to be honest. The way that she used the voices and the tone that she used, maybe also her accent, reminded me a lot of Jacob of Twilight and his werewolf shape-shifting thing, which I just found a little bit awkward and cringy. So that really wasn't for me. So if I am going to pick it up, which I will in the future because the premise sounds very interesting, then at least I will read the physical copy instead of listening to the audiobook. So that was everything that I had on my winter TBR. Now for my spring TBR, the idea is that I will start 2 new series, but these are series that are written by favorite authors of mine, so I am quite excited to start these. And then I do have 3 continuations of series, but again, series that I am quite excited to pick up again. So hopefully my spring TBR is going to be more successful, or my spring wrap-up, than my winter wrap-up. And the first book on my spring TBR is actually one that I already started and am enjoying. So this one will definitely be successful for the spring wrap-up. And that is Fool's Errand by Robin Hobb. This is the first book in the Tawny Man trilogy, which in itself is the third series in the realm of the Elderlings. And it goes back to Fitz and the other people, or some of the other people that you see in the Farseer trilogy. Now, when I was reading the Lifeship Traders trilogy, which is the second series in the realm of the Elderlings and which focuses on a different part of that world and different characters, I was going back and forth whether or not I loved the Farseer trilogy more. But now I'm back in that world, there is no mistaken. I love Farseer, I love Fitz, and I think that I did enjoy that more than the Lifeship Traders, even though both series are amazing. And Robin Hobb, at this point, is my favorite author of all time. And I think that that thought will only be solidified if I read more by her in the future. This book, in the beginning, is already quite slow. I'm 200 pages in and not a lot has happened, but I'm just so glad that I'm back with Fitz and some other familiar characters that I don't even mind. So this is definitely going to be a new favorite. I already know this. I think that I will probably love this series even more than Farseer because I already know the characters, I already love them, and now I just need to see what they're up to in the future. So definitely excited to continue reading this one. The other series that I am going to start in spring is written by another one of my favorite authors, Juliette Marillier, and she has actually written Daughter of the Forest, which is my favorite book of all time. And by her I am going to start the Bride Chronicles, if that's how you pronounce Bride. And the first book there is The Dark Mirror. Now, I do think that there are a lot of similarities between this series and the Seven Waters series, because it is also historical fantasy. You have magic that is very closely connected to nature, there are druids involved and stuff like that. And I think that there also will be a lot of romance. And I think that the way that Juliette Marillier writes romance is really out of this world. It's the way that I enjoy romance most of all. So again, I'm very excited to start this new trilogy by her. The next 3 books on my spring TBR are all continuations of series, which I'm quite excited about. And the first one is Tower Lord by Anthony Ryan. This is the second book in the Raven's Shadow trilogy, and the first one was titled Bloodsong. Now, I loved Bloodsong, and it was one of my favorite books of last year. But you could definitely read that as a standalone, and that is why I wasn't dying to pick up the second and the third one. Especially when I heard some people say that the second one does steer away from our main character, Valen, quite a bit, and that it's just different in tone in general. But then lately I heard some people say that yes, it's different, but that doesn't really mean that it's not good, and that they did enjoy it quite a bit, and I should give it a try. Now, because I did love the main character, Valen, but I also loved the world building, the magic system, and just the general tone, I do think that I will really like the second book. And if I don't, I will just consider Bloodsong as a standalone. But I do want to read more grimdark. I think this is a very good grimdark trilogy, or at least the first book really gripped me, so I am going to give this one a chance, and I hope that I love it. The next book on the list is another one that I know that I will love, and that is Skullthorn by Brian Staveley. Now, Brian Staveley is an author that I have talked about quite a bit on this channel because he is the author of the Chronicle of the Unhoned Throne trilogy, which is one of my favorite trilogies again of 2020. And I actually have a non-spoiler review for it that I will link down below. Now, Brian is actually writing a new trilogy that takes place a couple of years after the events of the original one. And the first book of that trilogy, The Empire's Ruin, is going to come out in July. Skullthorn, on the other hand, is a standalone that follows a side character of the original trilogy in her younger years. And I've actually heard that this is the best out of the 4 books that are currently out. So I am quite excited for this, and I was savoring it until I was closer to the release date of this new trilogy. But as I said, it comes out in July. Spring for me is April, May, and June. So I definitely need to read this. And I already know that I will love it, so there's no risk, and I just want to go back into this world and get ready for the new trilogy. Then the last book on this list is actually the one that I'm least excited for, but to be fair, I'm excited for the other ones a lot. So this is one that I still want to pick up and I think that I will love, but it's on the bottom of the list. And that is Hollow Empire by Sam Hawke. Now, this is the second Poison War novel, and I think that this is a duology, so this is one that will actually finish up the series. The first book was City of Lies, and I really enjoyed that one. I read it in January, and there were a lot of things that I loved. You had a lot of political intrigue that was done right, in my opinion, where you keep being invested, there's a lot of mystery, and only at the end are you able to figure it out yourself. There are some strong friendships that I liked, there was also some romance. It's only a sprinkle, but it was done well, in my opinion. And the only negative that I had was that it was a quite stagnant story because it does take place in a city under siege. And I like it when there's some traveling where you have different scenes and stuff like that. So that was a little negative for me personally. However, Patrick, and you know Patrick, he has a YouTube channel, but he is also very famous on Goodreads. He has a lot of very thoughtful reviews. He read both of these. And he said that although he loved City of Lies, he thinks that the difference in quality between City of Lies and then Hollow Empire is enormous. And that this sequel was actually the best one that he read of last year. So I already love City of Lies, so I can only imagine how good Hollow Empire will be. And I do think that we might be able to see a little bit more traveling in this one. So I'm quite excited to pick this one up. As I said, it will finish this series, so that's something that I want to do. I want to finish the series as much as possible this year to tie up some loose ends. So this one will be one that I will hopefully read in spring as well. So those are all of the books that I have on my spring TBR and that I will be reading by myself. But I actually also have some buddy reads planned in spring that I just want to quickly show you, also to let you know that I am quite interested in buddy reads. So if you are interested in reading any of the books that you see behind me or that you know that I am hauling, then just please let me know, contact me on whatever social media that you have and I have as well, and we can work something out. But without further ado, the buddy reads that I am currently in the middle of or that I have planned for the upcoming months are The Last Queen by Sidney Pike. I am buddy reading this one with Chris over at Chris Bookish Cauldron, and we have actually already started this one because we are buddy reading in April. The next one is a read-along that I am co-hosting with Steve over at Steve Talks About Books and Stuff, and that is for the entire Faithful and the Fallen series by John Gwynne. And the first one, Malice, we will be reading in May, so you still have time to pick up this book if you want to buddy read with us, and I will link the announcement video down below so you know everything you need to know to buddy read this with us. And then the big one. I am buddy reading The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. Yes, I am going to start the Stormlight Archive, and I am going to start in May together with Lou. I don't think that Lou has a YouTube channel, but I am talking to her over on Discord, and we are starting in May, but I said that I am going to take this one slow, so it might take me 2 months before I actually finish this first book, because it is quite thick, and I do think that I need a lot of brain power to go through this. And then the last buddy read that I have planned is for The Once and Future Witches, and I am going to buddy read this with Erin. Erin has a channel, The Ramblin' Reader, and I will link her channel down below. She reads a ton of books and she's just very fun to hang around with, so I hope that we will both like this book, and we actually are buddy reading this one again in May. So May is probably the busiest month that I have, but yeah, that's just the way it is. The other book that I am reading is Stalking Darkness, I think that this is called, by Lynn Flewelling. This is the second book in the Night Runner series, and this is a read-along that's being hosted by, again, Chris over at Chris Bookish Cauldron and Andy Smith. So this is, again, one that I will be reading this month in April, but the series does continue, and the read-along continues until the end of this year, so 1 book per month is also on my schedule. So even though I only have 5 books on my spring TBR, I have a lot of other books that I'm reading for read-alongs and buddy reads, so I do think that my TBR in general is quite packed. However, I always have room for another buddy read, so just so you know. So those are all of the books that I plan to read anytime soon. Do you also have a TBR, or do you just swing it and pick up whatever you like? Please let me know in the comments down below. As always, I hope that you enjoyed the video, and see you later. Bye!